everyone, so it's been quite a while since my last video, and the Hermione fanfics that I was reading was starting to get just a little bit repetitive. And so I decided, why not try reading a new ship? Why not try reading Tomione? This was a pairing that I would never have considered when I was younger, but now, me, adult me, enjoying morally grey characters, maybe morally black characters, was like, why not? Let's give it a go. And so I did some digging and investigation, and I found a few fanfics that the Termini stans consider their version of isolation, their canon. So I gave those a read, and before I go into the fanfictions that I've read, I kind of want to just talk about the dynamics of Tomione versus Hermione. It is very different. Although both boys pretty much have a lot of daddy issues, one really loving his father a lot and trying to live up to his expectations, and the other hating his father for not hating his father. It plays out in their characters very differently. What I really enjoy about the Hermione fic is really Draco Malfoy's character and his evolution and journey. I feel like in Hermione fics, Draco Malfoy is kind of the star. I mean, we all love Hermione, but she is the constant, she is the moral beacon, and she guides him to complete this moral evolution, to overcoming beliefs that he held because he was taught those beliefs. And so I feel like that character journey is very interesting. His redemption arc is very compelling. Whereas Hermione in the Hermione ship doesn't have as big of a character change to go through. The biggest hurdles that she usually has to overcome is that of her friends. What would they think? I mean, it's scary, of course. It's scary to go against those that you love for maybe someone that they think is not worthy of you. But ultimately, it's quite linear, her journey. In contrast, in Termini, I feel like Hermione really shines. Hermione starts off morally righteous, but she goes through some level of corruption. She becomes morally grey. She picks up the cunning of Slytherin, but at the very end, she still remains, in a very strong way, morally righteous. It's interesting, but at the same time, for me, I always feel like it's not quite as satisfying because neither her nor Tom really complete that journey. With the Termini pairing, I feel like Tom Riddle is at that crucial time period in his life. He has not gone too far yet. He could possibly be salvaged, and Hermione tries this, but the cycle, the journey is broken because she realizes that he can't be changed. This is who he is, and he is kind of in a way destined to go down that route of becoming Voldemort. So for me, I feel like the Hermione character arcs are a little bit more satisfying because Draco does complete the whole journey, whereas I feel like with Termini, both Hermione and Tom kind of go down that journey a little bit, but they stop there and they kind of still end up where they were beginning with. Also, a very big difference between the brightest witch of her age. And Hermione and Termini deals with this epithet that Hermione has been given quite differently. Other readers might disagree, but to me, in Hermione, Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger are academically equals. And she's very smart, yes, but she works very hard. But I feel like in the Termini ship, Hermione is not just the brightest witch of her age group. She is the brightest witch of the millennia. She, I think, is pushed beyond her limits to match up with Tom Riddle and what would become Voldemort. So I read a total of 4 fanfics. The first 2 that I read was by Provocative Envy, and this author has the privilege of being like the author for the fanon canon in the Termini ship. She wrote both Nightmare and Warpaint. So I first read Nightmare, and surprisingly this was not a nightmare to read. This was actually quite a daydream to read. So Nightmare is based on time traveling, and Hermione, using a time turner, had gone all the way back in the past when Tom Riddle was head boy of Hogwarts, and she finds herself stuck in Slytherin, and Tom Riddle is intrigued by her. She is immediately repulsed by him, which automatically confuses him and intrigues him because he has a very charming persona. Normally, people are immediately drawn to him. He cannot understand why, oh why, this common girl seems repulsed by him. And Nightmare is quite similar in a way to BMBS. Tom Riddle's diary aspect followed by Hermione's point of view. But I have to say that Tom Riddle's diary entries are so good, and this honestly places Nightmare above BMBS for me. It is fantastic. I'm gonna read you guys a few diary entries just to kind of show you the level of that I feel from Tom Riddle's diary entries. This is a diary entry of when he just thinks she's a commoner. She is utterly unremarkable for the most part. She simpers at Malfoy, rolls her eyes at Dippett's senility, and seems to be only slightly above average academically. Oh. But despite her rather uninspiring normalcy, I can't fully escape the feeling that she has a secret. There are too many inconsistencies in her mannerisms, her recollection of the past. I doubt anyone else has noticed, considering the nauseating self-absorption that runs rampant in this school, but I most certainly have. And I cannot help but wonder, what is she hiding? So this is the diary entry where he is already starting to fall into obsession. Getting into her head would be laughably easy, except she would hate me. She already hates me. She would have reason to if I did this though. It would be an invasion of her privacy. An assault, really. And she's defenseless. It would be unethical. Not that ethics are a particular concern of mine, but she would never forgive me. She already hates me. Perhaps if I was gentle. No, she would know. She would know, and she would run right back to Malfoy and probably beg him to marry her. No, fuck, no. Legitimacy is a last resort. I can be patient. Not that I need to be. She already hates me. Would alienating her really make that much of a difference? She'll eventually be expendable. God knows Dumbledore's already given her a shelf life. But after all the trouble I've already gone through to keep her safe, it seems almost sacrilegious to discard her like that. Surely I deserve some kind of reward. No, yes, fuck. She really is a cunt. I love that internal debate that is captured in his diary entries, that back and forth between yes, no, I absolutely love that. I am obsessed with that. So honestly, I really enjoyed Nightmare. I enjoyed Hermione at first resisting Tom Riddle and then kind of deciding, you know what, he is too interesting to bypass. I am interested in him and I can't help it because never have I been challenged mentally, magically in this manner before. And I think that's what's so intriguing about this pairing. However, where Nightmare falls short for me is towards the end maybe I'm just not the brightest muggle in my age, because I felt like I could not keep up with their cunning and their plotting, because they both operated very much on a he knows I know that he knows that I know and vice versa, because they were not telling each other the complete truth. And along the way, perhaps they know that they know that they know that they know, but I did not know. And I found myself questioning, does the author know? Or do the characters know and she is not quite sure herself, so she can't explicitly state it for me who can't follow? And towards the end, it could be the fact also that I was rushing to finish it at 2 a.m. when I had work the next day, but I was just taking things at face value. I could not predict what was gonna happen, and I could not fully brain all their different motivations and explanations and their own logical thought processes. Other than that though, very fun read, and I would say this is a good Termini starter. So the next one that I read, which I found out after, was disputed to be also Termini headcanon, is Warpaint. Now Warpaint is kind of based more on Tom Riddle's diary. Instead of the diary falling in Ginny's hands, it falls into Hermione's hands. And if I recall correctly, it starts off a little bit weird because there is a slight tad more of an age gap. Hermione is quite young when Tom Riddle's diary falls into her hands. But I didn't like Warpaint quite as much as Nightmare, because although I preferred the diary aspect of, like, instead of her traveling back into the past, she falls into the diary instead, I felt like Tom Riddle was very tame here, and I personally didn't find it as interesting. In this version, Tom Riddle actually helps Hermione overcome Voldemort. And everyone, I don't know, I just felt like the whole storyline was very tame. There was not as much angst, and I think it's quite a lot shorter than Nightmare as well. So, Warpaint is alright. I don't love it, but different folks, different strokes, I guess. The third Termini fanfic that I read was Unsphere the Star by Cocoartist, and Unsphere the Star is quite interesting. It's similar to Nightmare in the sense that Hermione does travel back in time, but she decides to just live her life in the past, and she falls into a relationship with Tom Riddle, and she explores magical theory. This one is really interesting because Cocoartist has really built up the Harry Potter universe in her own right. It is very different, and it kind of really goes deep into magical theory, but ultimately I felt like the plot was quite flat. You do see a lot of development in the character. It's really interesting to see Hermione becoming from just like a student to really mastering fields of magics. So in that sense, I think it is unparalleled to any other fanfic that I've read, but emotionally I felt like it was quite flat. So I feel like this one would be a good one if you're really into world building, but you don't need like the intensity of the plot to keep you going. The last one I read, a mammoth of a fanfic. I think the thickest fanfic that I've ever read. I mean, this one really makes Manacle seem like a short read. Madame Umbridge's Home for Wayward Girls by LovelyVillain. Almost 3,000 pages, over 30 hours of reading. So if you read an hour a day, it would literally take you over a month. This tested my commitment, honestly. And the thing is, it is a good fanfic. But I feel like a skill that is also important in storytelling is brevity. And some brevity could have been helpful here. So Madame Umbridge's Home for Wayward Girls is very different from any other fanfic that I've read. First of all, it's a Muggle AU, and I personally haven't really read any Muggle AUs. Second of all, it is set in Victorian England. So those two paired together made it impossible for me to kind of already know the character's intentions and motivations from the outset. And that intrigued me, especially when Tom Riddle was introduced here. Another thing that makes it very interesting is that this book had both Termini and Hermione in it, and it really does explore the dynamics between the two. And I think it does accurately kind of represent the dynamics that I had noticed in general about Hermione and Termini. So Madame Umbridge's Home for Wayward Girls is set in an orphanage run by the evil, the worst of all Harry Potter characters, Madame Umbridge herself. Hermione has been orphaned because her parents passed away in a house fire, and she lives in the orphanage with a few other characters like Luna, Hannah Abbott, Parvati Patil, and Lavender, and she's very close to these girls. In fact, since her parents passed away, she's kind of withdrawn from the friends that she grew up with, like Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Draco Malfoy, and Neville. Of course, shit hits the fan when Lavender goes missing, and Madame Umbridge refuses to do anything about it. Hermione takes it into her own hands to kind of uncover and figure out where has Lavender disappeared to, and subsequently, why is there a pattern of disappearances? So Madame Umbridge's Home for Wayward Girls is categorized as mainly a horror and not a romance fanfic. This is also something very different from the other fanfics that I read that are very much driven by romance. There are, of course, slithers of romance, both Hermione and Termini, but honestly, the bulk of romance that you see here are between the side pairings. The plot was very interesting, very cool, and I don't really want to spoil too much of it. But I will say that at around 70%, I lost my patience. I felt like the story built up quite well, up to 70%, and then I was just like, can this be over? I wanted a resolution. Now, here's what I think went wrong for me. The author clearly really loved the characters, and this meant that we had to follow a lot of side stories that were not integral to the main plot line. The problem with this story is that I like my characters face adversity. I like to see that journey. However, there was just too much adversity in this one. So in a normal movie or a novel, right? It's problem, solution, joyous, problem, solution, joyous. This one was like problem, 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 obstacle, 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 more obstacles, so many obstacles in a row. I felt like I needed a break. Like, please, give them some respite. Give me some respite. We did not need that many obstacles to come by a small part of the solution. It was exhausting. I felt like this story was just bloated beyond measure, unnecessarily, no matter how well it was written. This honestly was a 2 or 3 out of stars for me, because at the end it was too much emotional labor to read, and by the very end I just found myself skipping. Just tip tap, way too much exposition. Let's just get on with it. Unless you have a lot of free time and high levels of commitment, if you're afraid of big books, this was not worth it to me. Honestly, it wasn't. I'm sorry to all those that love this story. I don't know. Personally, I still prefer the Hermione dynamic and pairing, but feel free to try to prove me wrong. Recommend me more Termini. Maybe I didn't read the right ones. Maybe my research was not extensive enough. Maybe these are not the best of the best. So please let me know what you think I would like. Recommend me down there. And if you are a Termini or a Hermione stan, which one do you prefer? Why? What are your reasons for preferring one or the other? Do you agree with my assessments of the dynamics between the pairings? Give me all your thoughts down below. I love chatting with people who comment in my videos. I love kind of just sharing our insights. And yeah, until the next one, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye bye.